Intermediate Algebra for Statistics, Polynomial Functions Part 2. Lesson Objective: Recognize the typical graphs of quadratic and cubic functions. Lesson Objective: Names of polynomials. There are different ways to name polynomials. If we name the polynomial by the number of terms, a monomial is a one-term polynomial. Binomial is a polynomial with two terms. Trinomial is a polynomial with three terms. And if it has more than three terms, we just call it a polynomial. If we go by degree, 0 degree is a constant. First degree polynomial is a linear. Second degree is a quadratic. And the third degree is a cubic. Quadratic functions. Definition: a polynomial function is a function whose equation can be put in the form f of x equals p, where p is a polynomial in terms of the variable x. If p is a quadratic second degree polynomial, we call the function a quadratic function. A quadratic function is a function whose equation can be put in the form f of x equals ax squared plus bx plus c, where a is not equal to 0, called the standard form. A cannot be equal to 0 because this would disappear and we would be left with a linear function. A, b, and c are coefficients. Example 8. For f of x equals negative 2x squared plus 5x minus 1, find the following. Number 1, f of 4. Number 2, f of negative 3. And number 3, f of 0. Solution: f of 4 simply means we take this polynomial expression and everywhere we see an x, we substitute 4. Next, we follow the order of operation. We have to square before we multiply. So 4 times 4 is 16. We have to multiply before we add or subtract. So this would be negative 32 plus 20 minus 1, which gives us an output of negative 13. So when x is 4, the y value will be negative 13. Number 2, f of negative 3 becomes negative 34. And the last one, f of 0, becomes negative 1. Now this is also known as the y-intercept. So if we were to graph this quadratic function, the y-intercept would be negative 1. We can use the graphing calculator to compute these values for our quadratic function. Our first step is to put the equation in our y equals. Next, we want to go back to the home screen. Then we want to press vars button, which is short for variable. Go to y-vars, number 1, which is function. We put the equation in y1, so we want the function y1. And then we put parentheses the value that we are interested in. So when x is 4, y is negative 13. When x is negative 3, y is a negative 34. And when x is 0, y is equal to negative 1. Example 9. Sketch the graph f of x equals x squared. This is a quadratic function, so we can make a table of values. It's good to pick some negative numbers, 0, and some positive numbers. Negative 3 squared becomes positive 9 because negative times negative is positive. Negative 2 squared is 4. Negative 1 squared is 1. 0 squared is 0. 1 squared is 1. 2 squared is 4. 3 squared is 9. Using graph paper, we can plot these x, y coordinates. And this is what the graph of a quadratic function looks like. We call this a parabola. Using the graphing calculator, we type in x squared into y equals and hit graph, and we have our parabola. Definitions. The graph of a quadratic function is called a parabola. The lowest point on a parabola that opens upward is called the minimum point. The highest point of a parabola that opens downward is called the maximum point. The minimum point or the maximum point of a parabola is called the vertex of the parabola. The vertical line that passes through the vertex is called the axis of symmetry. Here we have the axis of symmetry. This is the vertex. The vertex will always be on the axis of symmetry, and in this case, for this parabola, this vertex is a minimum point. For this example, the vertex is a maximum point, and again, the vertex is located on this axis of symmetry. Example 10. A graph of a quadratic function f is sketched. Number 1, find f of 4. Number 2, find x when f of x equals negative 3. Number 3, when f of x equals 5. And number 4, when f of x equals 6. So for number 1, find f of 4. So this means find the y value when x is 4. So we go to the x-axis to 4, and we see that this point is 4, 3. So when x is 4, y is 3. So the answer to number 1 is 3. Number 2. Here we're given a y, we want to find the x. So this time we go to the y, we look for negative 3 on the y, which is here, and we see that there's 2 points on the parabola when x equals a negative 2 and when x equals a positive 6. So this has 2 answers. Number 3, when y is 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we see that this is only one x, that x is 2. So for number 3, the answer is x equals 2. And number 4, when y is equal to 6, there is no point on the graph when y is 6. So this is undefined. There is not an answer. It's the empty set. Cubic functions. Definition. A cubic function is a function whose equation can be put in the form f of x equals ax cubed plus bx squared plus cx plus d, where a is not equal to 0. A, b, c, and d are all coefficients. Example 11. Sketch the graph of f of x equals x cubed. We first want to make a table of values. It's a good idea to pick some negative numbers, 0, and some positive numbers. Negative 3 cubed is negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3, which is a negative 27. Negative 2 cubed is negative 8. Negative 1 cubed is negative 1. 0 cubed is 0, so on and so forth. Plotting these on graph paper, we see the shape of this cubic function. Here are some more typical graphs of cubic functions. Using the graphing calculator, we go to y equals, type in x raised to the 3rd power, and hit graph, and we see the graph of the cubic in our window. To look at the table, we hit second and graph, which is table, and this is the same table that we did by hand. So let's look at some other functions. In previous videos we looked at the linear function, and that's a function whose graph is a straight line. It has a slope of m and a y-intercept of b. The constant function is a special case of the linear function where the slope is equal to 0. In this video we looked at the quadratic function, and the graph of the quadratic is a parabola. In the next few weeks we will look at what's called the square root function. In this video we looked at the cubic function, and that's where the degree is 3. And we also looked at the absolute value function when we did piecewise functions. Thanks for watching.